On our faster etude for this year, the Böhme etude, there's really only a couple of terms that we need to define before we begin. The first is the tempo marking alla breve. This is basically a synonym for cut time, so we should be good there. The term risoluto means to play boldly and with resolve. In other words, don't play wimpy, play in a very bold, energetic, decisive, and confident manner. Next, the longer the note, the stronger the note. That was a phrase my college band director Ken Lewis used all the time. 9 times out of 10, the longer note in any phrase is the one that should receive the most emphasis. That holds true for this entire etude. The moving staccato eighth notes are not the important notes. The half notes and the quarter notes tied to eighth notes are. Thirdly, and this goes along with the last point, make all of those staccato eighth note runs move to and from the longer and stronger notes. This etude is fast and it has a lot of staccato markings, but that doesn't mean that it should be played unmusically or without shape to the musical lines. You're already putting your emphasis on those longer notes, so then make those eighth notes move dynamically and just in terms of the shape of the line to and from those longer notes. Fourth, don't play the staccato eighth notes too short. You're already going to be playing pretty fast and you're going to be tonguing, and really at this speed that's going to be enough to provide the staccato effect. If you try to make it staccato beyond that, you're going to have some really bad results with regard to your tone quality. You may not even have any real tone at all. You're just going to have the sound of a lot of tongue and air without any pitch to it. You want to have the best tone quality that you can have all the time. So really, just tongue and blow and let the notes come out. Just play. Follow the shape of the line and don't worry about trying too hard to make it short. It's going to be short enough, I promise. Fifth, there's going to be a tendency to hold those quarter notes tied to eighth notes too long. In syncopated passages like we find all over this etude, you really want to have a lot of space and get off of those longer notes anyway, and that's especially true when you see a tie. There is a very common tendency to want to hold those notes too long, and you risk losing a whole lot of time that way. If anything, I would err on the side of playing those ties like tenuto quarter notes followed by eighth rests, just to make sure that I get off of the ties soon enough, instead of holding them too long and losing a lot of time. Now, sixth, and this almost sounds contradictory, I guess, but it's really not, don't rush the half notes. So I was just talking about not holding the longer notes too long and making sure that you get off of the ties, and that's very important. But the half notes are not quarter notes, and there's going to be a tendency, if you're not careful, to play the half notes too short. While you still want to have an appropriate amount of space between the notes, part of appropriately emphasizing longer notes, like those half notes at the ends of phrases, is making sure that they receive more or less their full value. As always, using your metronome will help you to make sure that you do this correctly. In fact, not only should you practice with a metronome, you should use that metronome as a tool to practice both slower and faster than the written tempo. Practicing slowly is obvious in something like this because it helps you to work out your fingerings and your slide positions. Practicing quickly is perhaps less obvious, but is also very helpful. Let's say that you're shooting for playing this at 100 beats a minute, kind of in the middle of the prescribed tempo range, and also an easy number to do all the math I'm about to do using that number. So if you're going for 100, then you'll practice some at half tempo, or 50 beats a minute, and 3/4 of the tempo, which is 75 beats a minute, just to get the notes under your fingers. You'll practice at tempo, since that's what you're going to be doing at the audition, but you should also go to 125% of the tempo, 125 beats a minute in the practice room. Is it going to be hard at 125? Yep. Is it going to be frantic at 125? Also yes. But after you've tried that fast tempo, the actual tempo of 100 beats a minute is going to feel a lot more comfortable. Another thing, while you're working on it slowly, every now and then try taking all the staccato markings out and play the eighth note lines as legato instead. We tend to play with better phrasing when we play legato, and yet we need to play with good phrasing all the time, even on faster staccato passages. Work out your phrasing when you're playing a little slower and then in the legato style, and then try to emulate that style at the written tempo, and at the written articulation. I think that's going to give you a much more pleasing overall result. Eighth, in the audition itself, play just a little bit slower than you think you should. You're going to be nervous in an audition. Your heart rate's going to go up, and you're going to have a tendency to play a little bit too quickly. Now, if you've been practicing some at 125 beats a minute, then that's not going to be as perilous a problem as it would be if you had never practiced faster than the indicated tempo. But if you let that tempo creep up in the room, chances are that you're not going to be as clean, and it's not going to be as musical, and it's just not going to be as good. So when you're there in the room and you're a little nervous, heart rate's up, breathing is a little funky, and you're going to control for that by having marked your breaths. You're there and you're a little nervous. Whatever tempo you think you need to go, step back just a few beats a minute from what you think you're doing. And when you do that, you're going to be much more likely to play at what is actually an appropriate tempo, the one that you've really been shooting for. Next, emphasize both written and unwritten dynamic contrasts. We have a tendency to not always play as musically on the quicker etudes as we do on the slower ones, like I mentioned a minute ago. But you really should seek to play as musically and expressively as possible all the time. And when you put emphasis on the longer notes rather than the shorter notes, make sure that that comes out, and then make sure that the difference between forte and piano dynamics really comes out. Make sure that any crescendo and diminuendo type things that you do along those moving eighth note lines are emphasized and able to be heard. That's going to give a more musically satisfying result, and because people tend to just not play musically in the fast etudes, you're going to find that that sets you apart from your competitors in the audition. Lastly, listen to cut time marches and other 19th and early 20th century band literature to get ideas about style. Listen to Sousa, listen to Fillmore, listen to Carl King. Find good band recordings, particularly of marches, and especially of marches that have a lot of syncopation like this etude does. And listen to how they play phrases even through the fast-moving lines. Listen to how they put emphasis on the longer notes, and listen to how they get off of those syncopated notes so they don't lose time. Emulate that style, because that's the style that's basically present in this etude.